This story will sound unbelievable, and that's fine with me. But these are actually events that happened to me and my family. My sister and I have always been completely inseparable. Two peas in a pod, rolling around doing anything we wanted to do. And these events happened after my dad lost his job. You see, we were forced to downgrade. My dad sold our 3-bedroom home and bought a 2-bedroom fixer-upper near the edge of town. Things were hard on Dad, especially since my mother had died. He found it very difficult to manage me and my sister and deal with the pressures of life. And he went through this drinking spell. By spell, I mean a 2 to 3 month period where he was always drunk. Now, he was never abusive to anyone other than himself. But Dad was really in a bad way. It was during one of these late night drinking spells that we all encountered this ghostly werewolf-like creature. My sister and I were in the living room watching TV. And Dad was in the backyard drinking and smoking a cigarette. That's when we heard him fussing, saying, "Get out of here. Get out of here." At first, we thought Dad was talking about one of the neighborhood cats because they tend to wander over to our house. But as he continued to talk, he said, "Bad dog, get out of here." Then I heard this thud. You know the sound someone's body makes when it hits the ground? That thud. The thud let us know that Dad was pissy drunk. It was past time that we go get him and bring him back in the house. So my sister and I ventured out of the back door, only to see Dad on his hands and knees trying to stand up, whiskey bottle laid right out in front of him. Now, to truly understand what happens next, you really need a clear picture of our backyard. Imagine your backyard. The grass leads from the house all the way out to the backyard, about 60 feet. And at the end of that 60 feet is a row of trees. And from there, the terrain kind of moves upwards uphill. When we walked out of the door, Dad was almost at those trees. And as my sister and I started to walk over to him, suddenly she froze in place. You know how when you're walking with someone and they stop walking and you notice the absence of their presence out of the corner of your eye? That's kind of how it was. But for some reason, it didn't register to me that something was going on, so I kept walking. That's when my dad looks up at me from the ground and starts talking with this slurred voice. "Go back in the house. This wolf out here is out of control. I'm finna have to shoot this damn wolf. Get my gun." Now, there have been many, many days where Dad has ordered us to go get his gun. Like for random things like cats and squirrels and possums and stray dogs. So I was going to ignore him. Until I heard my sister's feet beating the ground, headed back into the house. Only then did I realize something was really wrong. I had turned for a quick second, looking at her as she ran away. And when I turned back towards my dad, he was up on his feet. And just beyond him, at the base of the hill in our backyard, was this creature. This thing looked like a wolf, except it was big. I mean real big. It was on all fours and jet black. Now, I was 12 years old at this time. And this thing was taller than me on all fours. And I could see its teeth. And its lips were rolled back as if it was growling, but there was no sound. I stood there frozen, trying to process what was going on for about at least 6 seconds. Then I started pulling my dad, trying to get him back into the house. That's when this giant wolf starts to charge us, its eyes glowing this red color. And all I remember is Dad picking me up and running towards the door. I could see my sister standing in the doorway with the shotgun. Then I remember my dad tripping and us both falling down on our way into the house. And somehow the back door was closed. And this is where the real crazy stuff starts to happen. There was this thud on the wooden door. And next we could see this wolf's snout and teeth coming through the wood of the door. Now, it's not like it was breaking the door down, but it was coming through the door. I could hear the wooden door creaking and cracking under this intense pressure. And right then at that moment was the only time I ever heard a noise from this thing. It was this low, deep growl, then followed by this whistling sound, this high-pitched whistling sound, just loud. And next, it was gone. We all stayed there, frozen in place for another 3 to 5 minutes. We were waiting to see what would happen next. But nothing happened. And that night, we all slept in Dad's bed together. The following morning, we went into the yard and looked around. Now, there were scratches on the back door that were never there before. We found half of a canine print on this little concrete slab that's right at the back door. Now, I need you to understand something. These events were weird, strange, and absolutely terrifying. But there was one positive thing that came out of this. You see, my dad stopped drinking. He thought that this creature was a hellhound coming for him. And after hearing you talk about Dogman, I think it may have been a ghost of a Dogman. Why? Because of its head. It was massive, way bigger than any wolf or dog I've ever seen.